The boroughs are New York City. The burbs are everywhere else. Real estate is the ultimate game of risk and reward. It's the biggest investment most people ever make. Fortunes are made over a lifetime and lost in a day. And we're not playing with monopoly money. How do you stay ahead? Who's buying? Who's selling? And why? What do they know? We want the truth. You need an edge. Boroughs and Burbs is your secret weapon, giving you the insider knowledge and strategies you need to succeed in the high-stakes world of real estate. From Palm Beach to Palm Springs, Manhattan to Malibu, we press the experts to expose the pain, find the deals, and occasionally predict the future. That's Boroughs and Burbs, Thursdays, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific. Because everyone can make money in real estate.
We press the experts. Welcome, everybody. Boroughs and Burbs, episode 151, season 4. I'm your host, John Engel, in Connecticut, and that's my co-host, Roberto Cabrera, who's coming to you from
Manhattan, my friend, Manhattan.
World headquarters in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, center of the known universe. Today, we have Robin Compagno and Sheridan Sturm from Douglas Elliman, my experts in equestrian properties. If you don't believe me, why, you just pull out the latest issue of Equestrian magazine, and there she is. And we're going to ask her the hard questions. Where are the deals? Where are the deals, Sheridan? Where are the deals, Robin? But before we dive in to our discussion, I want to remind you of a few important calls to action. Visit our sponsor, gracefarms.org. We love Grace Farms. Used to be a horse farm, and then it became Grace Farms, and it is a fabulous river building on 80 acres of horse farm, beautiful rolling hills. It's awesome, and they've got the Philharmonic coming there for their big gala coming up, so go get tickets, gracefarms.org. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is go check out their Design for Freedom initiative to end forced labor in the building materials supply chain. Support the initiative with a purchase of Grace Farms tea and coffee. And without any further ado, hello, Robin. Hello, Sheridan.
Hi there. Thanks so
Hello,
much.
everyone.
Where are you in the world?
Las Vegas, Nevada, the most unlikely equestrian community that one could possibly think of. But yet we're here.
Wow.
Thanks for having us.
Both of you are in Las Vegas.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
So how does that lend to horse country, considering it's a desert, right?
Yes, it's certainly not the first thing that one thinks of when they think about equestrian properties. And yet there's a really robust and lively equestrian community here in Las Vegas. A lot of people coming from California and other areas. And so it's alive and well, although it's a small portion of our overall real estate market, but it is thriving, even though it represents a very small market share.
I guess we should start off with what is an equestrian property. So today's show is equestrian properties. And just like Roberto was thinking, well, I think that means upstate New York. I think that means Louisville. I think that means
Virginia,
maybe Florida. But I mean, so what qualifies and what are the range of equestrian properties that we're going to be talking about today?
In terms of price point?
Any way you want to describe it. I mean, if I have 5 acres here in New Canaan, I'm allowed to put a horse on it, but does that make it an equestrian property?
Understood. So you have to have specific zoning for horses here in Las Vegas. So there's that. To begin with, you must be on a horse zone property. Our acreages and parcels are much smaller here on the West Coast. For obvious reasons, the cost of land is exorbitant. So an ample horse property would be anything from 2 to 5 acres here. Anything over 5 acres would be an anomaly. So let's just think of in terms of 2 to 5 acres. We have horse properties on as little as 1 acre, and we're actually allowed to have between 4 and 5 horses per acre here in Clark County, which is dramatically different from other parts of the country.
Yeah, I keep seeing 2 acres per horse.
Correct. That would make sense in most areas, but again, here you can have up to 5 per acre. And even then, people here get variances from the county to have even more. So it's very high density, which Sheridan and I are, very fortunate in that we have ample space for our own horses. And it's something that's very important to me as an animal welfare advocate, that our horses have more space, but it's just a byproduct of real estate prices here. It's very difficult to afford more than 2 to 5 acres.
That designation that you just talked about, is that a geographical part of Las Vegas? Like it's to the north or south, or does that even matter?
There are little pockets throughout Clark County where you can find horse properties, but by and large, the northwest part of Las Vegas, which would be 20 to 25 minutes north of the Strip, just to give you some coordinates, tends to be where the majority of the higher end horse properties exist, and the majority of the amenities for horses are over on the northwest side of town.
Are there any sort of tax advantages or, cutouts with regards to land expenses and things like that because it's designated as such for some agricultural reason or whatever?
There are some tax benefits for agricultural properties, but you actually have to be producing something, breeding animals, growing hay, that sort of thing. So it is sort of difficult to qualify for agricultural use on 2 to 5 acres. But Sheridan's family has over 20, so maybe she can speak to that. They have a very large farm.
So I'm going to pull up the map while you talk about this, because you've been talking about Clark County, and I've got it up on the screen, and I can see that the city limits of Las Vegas are within that purple road.
Correct. That's about right.
And so you're talking about equestrian properties outside that beltway, right?
No, actually, within the parameters of what you have framed there is where the majority, over in the northwest part of the map there, exactly. That would be where the majority of the high-end horse properties are, where Sheridan and I both live as well.
Okay, got it. All right, go ahead, Sheridan. Talk to us about some of the larger properties that you're familiar with.
Yeah, I am lucky enough to live in a very specific community out here in Vegas that was originally an agricultural area. It used to be comprised of 1,000 acres of land. And over the years, as Vegas has grown, it has shrunk to a very small neighborhood called the Gilcrease. And the Gilcrease has actually been grandfathered into agricultural rights. So we actually do have some benefits, like we have flood irrigation to help maintain pastures year round and things like that, that are a benefit to agricultural land for horse properties.
How important is horse properties to the culture of Las Vegas? I mean, I would imagine it's one of the main reasons people leave LA and head out to the Great West, Nevada. And so, what percent, how important is it? How big a part of your market is it?
It's actually a small part of our market when you think of real estate as a whole. And again, this just keeps going back to land prices. It can be cost prohibitive for most to afford horses here with our current land prices. But we were founded on the back of a horse, if you will. I mean, the wild, wild west, and our forefathers all had horses, and the National Finals Rodeo was held here in Las Vegas. So the equestrian roots run deep, but they're more from a Western perspective and the early settlers of this area. I would say that the majority of the people that live here now are transplants from other areas, or the majority of the equestrians rather that live here now are transplants from other areas. As most of these old existing ranches have been sold off to developers. We're sort of on an island out here in the Northwest at this point.
So these are people that have already been involved in equestrian society, essentially in other parts of the country, and they're coming there to almost experience like a boutique version of what maybe they had somewhere else, which was larger.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big drivers is Southern California and California in general. Obviously, everyone is aware of the high cost of living in California, the extraordinary tax rate. We, of course, have no state income tax. We're one of the few states in America without state income tax. And so it's very, very affordable relative to the cost of living in California. So we have a tremendous number of high net worth people from California that are relocating to Las Vegas for those tax benefits and just an enhanced quality of life overall.
Can you speak to the price of land? You're talking about how expensive and prohibitive it is. What's happened over the last, say, 10 years? Has that just been because of the population growth?
Yes, just explosive growth. And again, California being the big driver, over 50% of our buyers, over $1 million, our luxury home buyers would be coming from California. And that's been pretty consistent over the last 10 years. Again, the cost of living, the extraordinarily high taxes, and our close proximity to California makes Nevada a natural choice because these clients can still maintain a second home at the beach and still enjoy California, but they make Nevada their primary residence for tax reasons. We have a great international airport here, so it's very, very easy to get anywhere all over the world, both private executive airports and international commercial flights are just tremendously available, easy to get in and out of. So it's a very commutable city. It makes a lot of sense for high net worth people to relocate.
I'm in Connecticut. Roberto is in New York, and when he takes off on the weekend, he goes out to Long Island, and they've got, some farms out there. There's a great big equestrian show going on in the Hamptons right now, right? The Hamptons Classic, I think it's called. So when you talk about the equestrian properties in Las Vegas, and you're talking about the connection with California, that's a different world for me. When I Google, I'm going to pull it up right now. When I Google horse property. Okay, Ocala, Marion County is known as the horse capital of the world.
Correct.
They're in Marion County, Florida. And then if you go scroll down a little bit further, you hear Wellington. That's a place that I've heard a lot of show jumping capital, and everybody goes down there in the winter to Wellington in Florida, and then they bring their horses back up here to the Hampton Classic. And then here's an article, Kentucky and Florida in the horse capital battle. So talk to me for a moment about how us Yankees should think about Western equestrian versus Eastern equestrian. Do you have these horse shows? Is it a different kind of horse? Or are you doing show jumping? Or are you just doing trail riding? Talk to me about the East versus West.
That's a great question. And in fact, some of my friends and people that I know here in Las Vegas are actually out at the Hamptons, and they train in Wellington in the winter. So we have an enormous group of people from the West Coast that actually train in Wellington for the winters or are at the Hamptons Horse Show in August, September. We predominantly ride, Sheridan and I, and most of the people I know ride English, which would be dressage, show jumping, maybe eventing as well. But there is a huge Western community here. Obviously, again, going back to the Wild West and our roots in, cowboy country here in Nevada. So there is a big contingent of barrel racers and ropers and reining horses. And the South Point Equestrian Center, South Point Hotel, is one of the largest venues in the world for equestrian events. And the founder of the South Point, the Gahn family, are major sponsors and major participants in cutting, reining, roping, and that sector of the equestrian world. But Sheridan and I think are more closely related to the English side of things, but we have both, most definitely. And there are plenty of world-class horse shows, both here in Las Vegas and in Southern California, that are very accessible, like within 3 to 4 hours away.
Seems like we're talking about the difference between like a steeplechase race or something like that, and perhaps like a rodeo to be. I mean, is that,
Right.
and
Yeah,
it runs
you
the
won't
full
find any
gamut.
steeplechases here, but you will find world-class rodeo for sure.
So I was born in Richmond. I grew up in Maryland and Virginia, and I used to spend some time in Middleburg, and that was really like horse country, and it was really beautiful. And I'm sure you remember, or you've seen the movie Giant. The beginning of the movie Giant with all the horses is absolutely beautiful. And one of my favorite scenes is they're all sitting at the table, and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Benedict, how much land do you have down there?" And this and that, and they keep razzing him, and finally he just gets frustrated. He's like, "I have 595,000 acres," and the whole table goes quiet. But that's like, to me, that's horse country. This seems a bit different to me as you go west completely.
For sure, it is. In Southern California, it's a very similar climate as well. The equestrian community is alive and well in Southern California, but again, the parcels of land are much smaller. We do not have the rolling hills of hundreds of acres. Sheridan's family, and I'll let her speak to this, they have one of the largest privately owned farms filled with grass pastures, and it is just beautiful, but it is definitely an anomaly.
It's an anomaly, and they're just far and few between nowadays. I think we're seeing that a lot of the larger barns that used to exist out here in Vegas have sold out, so to speak, and are converting to, selling to developers and converting that land to being subdivided. So we are seeing a lot of the, historical larger properties that were here in Vegas and even in Southern California are being sold off and being parceled off. So there is definitely a big push for that. Although me and Robin definitely focus on trying to keep the equestrian properties that are here as equestrian properties. So we definitely try and do everything by appointment, make sure to get people in there to show off all of the equestrian amenities at any listings that we have, to really focus on what makes those properties so special and unique.
When selling a property like that, I'm sure it comes with tremendous amount of equipment and trucks for transport and things like that. Is that stuff included?
It is. Go ahead, Sheridan.
Yeah, I was just going to say sometimes it is. Typically, though, we will have that negotiated outside of the actual contract of selling the home. So that's typically how we see it done, but it depends on the seller.
But I would also say that particularly for first-time farm buyers, it's a major benefit to be able to buy the tractors, the equipment, and have a turnkey operation. In fact, the last several horse properties that I have sold have included things like golf carts, tractors, trailers, equipment, drags for the arena. All of those things are major benefits and value adds for buyers. But to Sheridan's earlier point, it is personal property, so it's typically done by a separate bill of sale.
So can you just, one of these properties that's 5 acres, for example, average price, what does it cost? What's the entry level, or not that that's entry level there, but 5 acre, what does that cost to get in there from this amount to this amount? What's the range?
So I just sold a 5 acre parcel, actually just under 5 acres, 4.5 acres, 4,000 square foot home with a couple of guest houses. And that sold at 4.8 million.
Okay.
Is this one on Guy Avenue, a horse property?
No, actually, but Guy Avenue is a brand new listing that we just took within the past day or two. And that's a perfect example of, our price point for 4 to 5 acres. In fact, Sheridan and I just did those pictures, met the photographer there on Friday. So that is our newest listing. And that listing came on the heels of the other sale at 4.8 million, which was substantially similar to this listing. And they called me because of that sale.
So this shows me what looks like a dressage ring. So can you just describe what I'm looking at? It looks like horse trailers and a ring.
Correct. That is one of 3 separate arenas. You'll have a covered arena there in the back.
Okay.
If you went a little further north of that sort of dark gray area, there is a covered arena as well. But this particular, exactly, thank you. So that is a large competition size covered arena. And then you have 2 other outdoor arenas that you had focused on earlier. And so this is a commercial equestrian property, a training barn, if you will. It's a very iconic, well-known competition barn here in Las Vegas. And so they have a lot going on. They have multiple horses in training, and they utilize all 3 rings. And so this particular farm is devoted to high-end hunters and jumpers. And all 3 of these rings are used for that, but there's certainly a regulation-sized dressage arena within this mix. So the buyer for this property could be a dressage buyer, could be a roping and reining Western buyer, or it could be a jumper buyer like they're using the property for currently.
And that's the house in the lower left of the frame.
That is one of 2 homes. So these properties often have multiple houses on them. This particular property has a 3,100 square foot main house. It has a exactly, there's the main house. And then to the right of it, you'll see a little guest house. Exactly, that's the guest house. That's 626 feet. Then you have a large 3-car garage that's 1,500 feet with a washer and dryer and a little workshop, a full shower. So that's one of 2 properties. Then there's an 1,800 square foot single story as well on the same property. So it's an ideal setup for maybe, a multi-gen family where you've got 2 families sharing the property, or the owners of the farm have live-in ranch help, which is very, very important. That would be the secondary home, correct? So that would be ideal for live-in help if you had it, or maybe you have adult children, that are living at home. We're seeing a lot of multi-generational compounds, if you will. So the covered arena is a major asset for our climate.
That sounds like a lot of value for $4.2 million.
It really is. I'm considering, and it's what we call a unicorn among properties, simply because there are so few of them. And the covered arena can be up to $500,000 to put up, and could take a year in planning and permitting. So the fact that this is already a turnkey operation, somebody can just come in and start doing business tomorrow, is a huge value add.
Is there a general factor by which the running costs of this is, 5% of the value of the property per year, or 10%, or I mean, I guess it depends what you're using it for, but this could get, I would imagine it could get quite pricey to run this.
Very much so. And the numbers will never pencil. So if a buyer's trying to make the numbers pencil, they just won't. This is essentially a passionate equestrian, quite possibly a high-end competitor that is just looking to offset costs. So when we lease out a barn, or we have, a select group of boarders or training clients, it doesn't even approach the monthly carrying costs of the property. It's merely an offset. And it's also, the camaraderie and the, shared supervision of the horses, and shared responsibilities to some degree. And just being around other equestrians is sort of what most people are after. But it can certainly offset your carrying costs significantly. Like for instance, the property that I just listed, you could potentially rent out the second home, live in the main home, have boarders. There are lots of ways that you can offset costs, but you could never charge enough for boarding to truly cover the carrying costs of a property like that.
In those drone shots, beyond all of what's obviously used property that you can see,
that's what I wanted to talk about too.
Huge swath of land out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who owns that? Is it developable? I mean, can I ride on it?
You can. And in fact, that's a great question. And it's one of the key benefits to this particular listing is it's within riding distance to Floyd Lamb State Park, which is a beautiful state park with dedicated trails. It actually has several ponds with ducks and peacocks, and it's quite beautiful. But this area is where the early Mormon settlers that came through on their way to California first settled in Las Vegas, and they've preserved a lot of Floyd Lamb State Park and have some of the original Mormon huts that were, developed in the 1800s. And we're doing everything we can to preserve this quality of life here.
But is that state land out there?
Yes, the Bureau of Land Management owns a lot of that vacant land that you see. And if you, right where your mouse is pointing, that we have a lot of land that is owned by the Air Force Base that's protected. You have Creech and a couple of other test sites and things like that out there. So that, if you travel far north, is government owned for the military.
And
So
on to Robin's point about the government owned land, over 63% of Nevada is actually owned by the federal government. So the majority of our land in Nevada is owned by the government, and they do release parcels every year that developers are able to purchase and then develop, but it's only released every couple of years.
So is that one of the great appeals? I mean, I guess if I go to Wellington, there isn't a great trail riding opportunity. If I go to Connecticut or the Hamptons, there's not a great trail riding opportunity. So aside from dressage, you're offering one of the great trail riding opportunities. I have to go west if I want to wide open spaces. I have to go to the Western states.
You're right. And there's also a beautiful area called Mount Charleston, which is about 20 minutes north of our new listing on Guy Avenue. And that is a perfect spot for summer riding. You do have to trailer out. Exactly. That's the Mount Charleston area. And there are miles and miles of unspoiled trails in a much cooler climate. And we can enjoy that in the summer months. We want to get our horses out and continue to train. There are miles of trails up in this area. It's heavily wooded and it's like another world. It's just gorgeous. But it is one of the major benefits of being on the northwest part of town is we're one of the few areas left that really have access to quality trail riding.
So, I was reading about all of these. The equestrian world is contracting, right?
Yes.
I mean, just the number of horses. I mean, I literally was looking at figures. The number of horses has dropped in the country, like more and more and more and more and more. Is that going to continue to the point where this is just like it's just a pocket of this and that, or I mean, I don't know what I'm asking, but I mean, it just
no,
seems
it's a good question.
really shrinking, and what that might mean for the price of these properties in the future, et cetera.
Well, I think what we're seeing is sort of the great divide between wealthier folks and your average income earners. And it's unfortunate because when I was growing up, access to horses and horsemanship was not nearly as expensive as it is now, but it's really becoming more of an elite sport. And it's obviously, they don't call it the sport of kings for nothing. It's an expensive hobby. And so I think with, the contraction in our economy and sort of the effects of inflation, one of the things that are cut out of someone's budget are luxuries like owning a yacht or having horses. Sort of one of the first things to go. But with that said, if you're truly a passionate equestrian like Sheridan and I are, it's in our DNA, and we'll give up lots of other things before we'll give up our horses. And I think most equestrians will share that sentiment. I can find lots of ways to cut budget on a monthly basis if I needed to, but my horses would be the last to go. Sort of like cheaper than a therapist, so to speak.
You both have horses.
We do.
Yes.
But do you keep them on the property that you live in? or do you board them
Yes.
somewhere else?
Sheridan, I'll let you speak to that since you have far more horses than I do.
Yes, my parents actually own a breeding facility, so we have about 32 horses that live on our property. And yes, we keep all of the horses on the property unless they are going to the vet or going to another clinic out of state. They pretty much live on our property all the time.
And Robin, do you have horses where you live?
Yes, we do. And you know, it's one of the ways that you can also offset costs because boarding can be upwards of $1,000 to $2,000 per month per horse. And it's not only a cost savings to keep them at home, you can control the quality. And Sheridan and I are both very dedicated and concerned about the quality of the care for our horses. And we give them the best of everything. And I have found one of the only ways to really do that is to do it yourself. But it can also offset costs. So in my case, I have 5 horses at any given time. And if I were boarding those, that's $5,000 per month minimum, probably closer to $1,500 per month per horse. So it's easier to justify by rolling that into your, you know, monthly mortgage, if you will, or your personal home. And it's also a huge convenience to just be able to walk out the door as opposed to drive across town.
Now it's beginning to make sense to me. If I love horses and I'm not fabulously wealthy with the wealth of kings, you're saying that equestrian properties where I can keep my horses with me, is an important part of the market because it's really expensive at $1,000 per horse to board them elsewhere. So one of the ways equestrian lovers are solving the problem is they're moving to Las Vegas. They're buying at the $4 million level where they can keep the horses with them, maybe board some other horses at the home. I mean, if you bought that $4.2 million, and then all of your needs are taken care of on the property. But if I could only buy a 2-acre property and it didn't have all those facilities, then I might board my horses at my home, but have to take the horses elsewhere for exercise.
No, you can make a 2-acre parcel work very nicely. It just requires a little more efficient space planning, but certainly you can accommodate 4 to 8 horses very comfortably, have ample space for an arena and, you know, maybe a small grass pasture or turnout area. It requires more efficient space planning. And Sheridan and I regularly help clients with, you know, those same concerns or challenges as to how they can make their property more efficient. How can they maximize the space on 2 acres? And that's quite common. 2-acre parcels are almost the norm here for horses.
Can I ask you something? We looked at that property that you represent, that you just photographed. Let's say I called you and you showed this to me and I was like, okay, I get it. What else can you show me? How many
That
other
would be it.
There's no other options. The market is that
tight.
Correct. So I had a property that I just sold at 4.8 million that sold off market, was never even listed. These properties are very few and far between. And, you know, I regularly counsel my clients that, you know, if this isn't the one for you, for whatever reason, you could be waiting a few years. It's almost as if somebody has to pass away to acquire some of these properties, or they're, you know, generationally passed down. But they are few and far between.
Is there any light at the end of the tunnel as to how to get more inventory, where there's more land that might get converted? Or
unfortunately, I don't see that happening. As long as the demand for housing is the way it is in Las Vegas, which far exceeds supply, I don't see anybody, you know, readily giving up 5 acres and dedicating it to grass pastures for horses when it's, you know, developable and so much more valuable for multifamily.
Let's just say one of those people wanted to sell their property and do something else with the land, would it be permitted for them to change the designation, or does it have to stay?
No, in fact, where Sheridan, and I'll let Sheridan speak to this, but where Sheridan lives in Gilcrease, some of those properties actually have what's called a deed restriction or a covenant that exists on the title to the property that would restrict its future use for generations. I mean, they're a group of devout preservationists, and we are all, sort of fighting to preserve the rural elements of Las Vegas and that quality of life for us all and for future generations. But by and large, no, there would be nothing prohibiting a property like mine on Guy Avenue, for instance, to being sold to a developer.
What kind of
So the
amenities are people looking for in particular? We saw dressage rings, we saw covered, we saw stalls. Is it enough to just have stalls? Is that the most important? And then exercise behind that? I mean, talk to us about the amenities that.
Sheridan, I think you're the perfect person to talk to us about that, since you have every amenity that one can think of.
Yeah, I mean, amenities are definitely important. I think, the most important for having a horse property is you got to have stalls. You have to have a place where you can put your horses. And on top of that, having a place where you can exercise them, i.e. a round pen or an arena or something of the like, is very valuable. Beyond that, having, a recreation space for the horses, something like grass pastures or ample open space, is also very important. I would say that the most important amenity, which can be very challenging to find here in Vegas, is water. Having quality water, whether it's water rights or having a private well. That's probably what I would say is the most important amenity here in Vegas when maintaining a horse property. Now, something that's very, unique to Vegas is we can actually purchase water rights. So you can purchase water rights from the city. It does cost about $20,000 per water right, but you can actually purchase them as well.
What does that mean? Can we need more explanation on this whole water right business? I mean, if I want water, I dig a well in Connecticut, and that's a $10,000 kind of thing. And you're saying this is $20,000 per year for a right?
Yes, for the right to have the water. That's correct.
Annually.
And well, when you buy the water right, that's just a one-time fee. Then there is, the fee to build the well, and then the, recurring fees for how much the water actually costs, depending on if it's a metered well or not. So there are just recurring fees that associate with owning the water as well. But it is something that you can write, and it does tie to the land. It ties to your property. And, if you are to sell your property in the future, you can remove the water right, or otherwise it will tie with the land and it'll be sold along with the property.
How much water does Robin need for 5 horses, or you need for 32 horses?
That's a great question. We have, I would say, about 20 water rights. Typically, back in the day when we did buy the properties, there were rights that were associated to the land that we bought. So it already came with water rights. In the last 10 to 15 years, it has changed where now you have to buy the water rights separately. So we have also bought additional rights on top of what we already had that was acquired through the land purchase. So we have amassed a large quantity of water rights.
You need it?
Each right is a quantity. It's like a unit measurement.
It is, I believe, and it does change depending on the rights that you purchase, but ours is a 1 acre foot right per water right. So we have 21 acre foot rights of water.
That's a lot of water.
It's a lot of water. Yes, but when you have flood irrigation to maintain grass pastures and things like that, you do use a lot of water, especially being out here in a desert. I mean, water evaporates incredibly quickly out here with our climate.
So I need all that water, not because the horses are drinking the water. It's because I'm maintaining pastures, and I need a certain amount of pasture per horse.
Correct.
Now, I will say that where Sheridan lives and in the Gilcrease area, they have a large and abundant underground aquifer water is in abundant supply. I don't know if any of you are aware, but the name Las Vegas essentially is a Spanish term for the meadows. And Las Vegas initially was a resting stop on the old Mormon Trail and the old Spanish Trail for settlers. There was abundant water here initially. It comes from Tule Springs, which is that Floyd Lamb Park that I had mentioned earlier. There is an abundant underground aquifer, and that is what serves the Gilcrease area, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
Sheridan?
Yep.
So it sounds to me like if I'm in the horse, if I'm a horse fan, then I need a realtor with that special skill who can evaluate how much water is available with the property, how much I'll need for my particular use, and I guess a lot of the other subtle things that my buddy, the realtor, might not know. I mean, I need a specialist.
It's absolutely critical. These are substantial investments that a client is making, and to work with an agent that doesn't have sort of the inside knowledge that is required to properly guide you, in my opinion, would be a monumental mistake. There are things, as Sheridan mentioned earlier, you know, water rights don't necessarily automatically convey with a property. You need an agent that understands these things, that understands wells, septic systems, land, zoning, use restrictions. There are so many moving parts and pieces to equestrian properties that you must work with a specialist to make a sound investment and make sure you understand exactly what you're getting or not getting.
Can we talk about the non-dressage, non-Las Vegas? My sister has a ranch out in Montana, and I've been told there are horses out there, but she's not there all the time. So is that something that you're finding a lot of people who have horses and who have multiple homes fly out west, visit the horses, use the horses for part of the year, and then go back to their day job in LA or New York? I mean, is that, or, you know, is that a thing?
It is. And I have lots of friends that have multiple homes, but they're typically within driving distance because the horses go with them. So the real play is to own a home here in Las Vegas for 9 months of the year, and then come June 1, hightail it out of here and go to a cooler climate like Montana, Utah, you know, Northern California. And to us, that's the ultimate luxury, to be able to leave for the summers, enjoy the 9 months of phenomenal weather that we have, our great tax climate, and go somewhere else for the summers. That's sort of the ultimate luxury. And a lot of the equestrians here in Las Vegas are able to do that.
Wow. So people are fleeing LA to come to Las Vegas so they can have a horse property. And then when it gets too hot in Las Vegas, they put the horses in the horse trailer and they head to Montana.
Or, you know, I know people that keep their horses in Malibu. Everybody knows Malibu, California, and they fly their private jet back and forth to ride them. I mean, anything's possible.
How much is hay and where do you get it from?
I saw that come through in the chat, and that's a fantastic question, and it is so regionally influenced. We pay an embarrassing amount of money for hay compared to the rest of the country. Although Wellington's probably maybe even a tad more expensive than we are. I'm pretty resourceful, so I source my hay directly from the growers, and therefore you can certainly realize a substantial savings. But Utah and Colorado are both areas that produce a lot of the hay that we consume. Northern Nevada also produces a lot of hay. I tend to like hay that's grown in the higher elevations simply because of the nutrient content. So higher elevations in Utah, Colorado, we're producing some stunning, beautiful hay, very nutritious. And you can pay commercially here in Las Vegas for that hay $25 to $30 a bale. If you buy directly from the grower like I do, you have to buy a semi-load, which is anywhere from 400 to 500 bales at a time. So one, You need to have space to store it, which a lot of people don't. And you have to have enough horses that can consume that quantity of hay, which again, a lot of people don't. But if you can buy in bulk, you can realize a very nice savings for $25 to $30 a bale, which is approximately 80 to 100 pounds per bale. And just for some frame of reference, horses consume 2% of their body weight per day in hay. So for my horses, which are big warm bloods, they can consume 40 pounds of hay a day. And if you do the math on that, it's an extreme bill every month.
So
You
that's
have to
2 bales
get-
a day, one horse were to eat?
One horse could easily, one horse could consume 30 to 40 pounds of hay per day. A big warm blood like I breed and raise, they could consume 30 to 40 pounds per day, depending upon their workload, their training schedule. I breed warm blood dressage horses, so a lactating broodmare, for instance, might easily consume 40 pounds a day. So if you are, going through 4 bales a week at $30 a bale, those are some pretty substantial feed costs. And then if you multiply that by like, how many horses do you have, Sheridan? Like 30?
30, 32. Yeah.
You know what your monthly
Definitely
feed bill
basic.
is?
Excuse me?
What's your monthly feed bill? Do you know?
Oh, I don't even want to guess what the monthly feed bill is right now.
Better
How
off not
often do
knowing.
you have to have a tractor trailer of hay bales coming in from Utah or Colorado for 32 horses?
We
Is that
do
like
a
a once a
semi-load
month?
about once every month and a half. So we'll do about, a huge semi-load that fills our entire, like a huge portion of our land with hay. So I'd say a lot of hay. Yeah.
Do
We try
bale
not
it
to
for
run the
you? Do they
numbers
put
and
it
do
up
the
with it?
math.
I used to bale hay when I was a kid, and you end up with all the black snot and the whole thing.
Oh
It's kinda-
yeah.
But that's a lot of work. Will they deliver it and like store it, put it in your, or do they just drop it
Yes,
off?
they will stock it up. They're not gonna just drop it off on the property and leave it outside. They do stock it up for us, which is fabulous because yes, it is a lot of work to stack a bunch of bales of hay.
But they also charge you for that. Sometimes
They
they'll
do.
actually bring a hay squeeze with them, which is an apparatus that's attached to like a forklift. And, there's some heavy equipment involved that they will often bring with them. And so there's an additional fee for delivering it and stacking it. I mean, all of these things have a ancillary price tag attached to them. The whole thing is expensive. We try not to sit down and actually do the math.
What about the big round bales? Is that not a better deal?
It is. It's a great deal. It's just, unfortunately, a lot of our suppliers up in Utah and Colorado aren't baling their hay in large round bales. And you see the round bales more on large scale breeding operations or farms, cattle farms. I think just because of the quantity that these round bales, contain, it's not really practical. They're unwieldy. They're hard to sort of deal with. And the preferred method for keeping hay on the West Coast is by a bale. It's usually 80 to 100 pounds. So I could probably, grapple with it if I had a wheelbarrow and I have to move it around. But a giant round bale, you really would need a substantial number of animals eating that. Otherwise, it's just wasted and potentially ruined in the weather. Someone just asked in the chat, what about vitamin E? And I think her question was about vitamins. So we test our hay. I mean, I'm fanatical about things like quality for nutrition, care, etc. So we actually have our hay tested and measure the nutrient content, the selenium, magnesium, copper, all of those things. Interestingly enough, and a little known fact is you can send off a sample of your hay to the local agricultural extension office and they will test it for you for free. So we test our hay, we supplement with vitamins and minerals to augment whatever the nutritional profile is of our hay that we're feeding. But
This
we
is
both
real
have
estate.
show horses and, we're a little over the top with the care.
back to real estate. What's been the trend? Nationwide, we've got a housing shortage. Roberto talked a little bit about that earlier. We've got too much demand, too little supply of ordinary properties, much less 2-acre plus, 5-acre plus properties that can accommodate 32 horses. Where's the trend been going, and where's it heading? When I watch Yellowstone, right, there's always some speculator coming in from the east, right, trying to redevelop the ranch. And that's a bad guy. There's always a bad guy from New York, trying to, muscle in on your horse farms. So is that a real trend?
It definitely is a real trend. And I think that's a trend around the country, but especially here on the West Coast. And it's a struggle. And, you think about these people that have owned these properties for 20, 30 years, they're getting older, they're tired, they've raised their kids, and a developer comes in and offers them $6 million for their 5-acre piece. They're selling and moving elsewhere. They're taking that windfall and moving out of state to a lower cost of living area and sort of using it as their golden parachute of sorts.
So where does a horse lover go if you just want to stay with the horses and the horse lifestyle, and you've been priced out of the Wellington, Las Vegas, Hampton, and Connecticut markets? I mean, do you go upstate New York? Do you go to Kentucky? I mean, what's been the trend?
All those places, and it's a great question, and it's a dilemma that I'm dealing with close friends and people that I've known well for years. And they're going to Aiken, South Carolina. They're going to Tryon, North Carolina. Beautiful, robust equestrian communities that are a third of the cost, with dedicated open space. And I've lost a lot of close friends to North Carolina. Wellington, probably not, because the cost of real estate in Wellington is closely matching that of Las Vegas. But Utah, there's still some very affordable spots in Utah. The key being moving to an area with good weather. So you can move to colder climates, Montana, Wyoming, but equestrians typically try to avoid those harsh winters. So places like Aiken, South Carolina, North Carolina, they offer a better year-round climate and much greater affordability.
So you're in a luxury market. This is fascinating to me. And you're watching migration out of an expensive luxury market into Aiken, South Carolina. I'll bet you have a person in Aiken. I'll bet you have a person in each one of these communities who is your resource, your ally, your partner in the horse community. I bet the horse community is a very tight circle, and therefore I shouldn't just call you if I'm interested in Las Vegas. I should call you as a horse expert so that I can get in to the circle.
Absolutely. I have had countless referrals around the country for people that I know through Las Vegas, people that I know through one of the largest Facebook groups for dressage horse breeding that I founded in Monterey. We have nearly 10,000 members. So this is a very affluent profile of horse owners that live all over the country. And I've been a resource for many of these people and have aligned them with fellow equestrian specialists in multiple locations around the country. So my referral business has definitely been growing, and it's been great. I have connections all over the United States at this point.
If you need an ally in the Hamptons, Roberto Cabrera, he's your man.
Okay, good to know. I'll definitely keep that in mind, Roberto.
Know about Texas? There's so many horses in Texas. Is that not a competitor, but is that also a place that people are going, that it's more affordable because there's more land?
For sure. And one of the great commonalities that we share with Texas is the lack of state income tax. I mentioned earlier that there are a few states in the country that have no state income tax, and Texas being one of them. So it's very, very affordable. Lots of phenomenal horse communities and counties. It's alive and well. Texas is definitely an area where I've seen a lot of migration.
But also very expensive. I mean, some of the highest rates of real estate price increases are happening in Texas. Has Texas been picked over, and that's why we're looking into the Carolinas?
No, not necessarily. I think if you compare California or Nevada to Texas, Texas hands down in terms of affordability. You can still get a 10, 20, 30 acre parcel of land with a very nice home in some of the outskirts of the larger cities for $1 million or $1.5 million, which would be almost impossible here in Las Vegas at this point.
Wow.
That's a deal.
It's a steal.
Yeah. I almost want to end on such an uplifting note. So let's talk about that, I guess, in our closing thoughts. Where is this market headed in the next couple of years? And I mean, that's a very exciting prospect, that there's still deals to be had out there in places like Texas that I can get to, and I don't have to pay income tax in.
No, I think that as long as, Nevada offers the tremendous tax benefits that it does, we are attracting a lot of affluent clients from California. And again, like I had mentioned earlier, we will go to the ends of the earth to protect our sport, our hobby, and our passion for horses. So we'll find a way to make it work. And Sheridan and I are over here doing what we can to preserve the equestrian lifestyle. And there are a lot of, fiercely dedicated conservationists and preservationists like the Sturm family and myself, and we're doing what we can to protect that quality of life and that way of living here in Nevada.
It's a big enough, I think, specialty in the market that it warrants having, I guess, its own magazines. I mean, it seems like a very loyal group, a very niche.
It's like yacht. It's like yachts, just like she said.
Very much a niche market. There's a tremendous amount of money in the horse world, and there's a lot of affluence. So typically where you have affluent communities, you find passionate equestrians, and Douglas Elliman has a dedicated division, as you know, for equestrian pursuits. It's an all-encompassing lifestyle, and I'm really grateful that we work for a company that embraces this segment of the market. And a lot of the executives within Douglas Elliman are enthusiasts just like we are, and participate at a very high level just like we do. If you were in the Hamptons recently, obviously you're aware we sponsor a lot of the largest shows and venues around the country. We're very involved. So are a lot of the major brands. You have Rolex, you have Range Rover, Hermes. So they know where the money is.
Very cool. All right, closing thoughts. Roberto, what did you learn today?
We didn't talk about Virginia. I still think of Virginia as that's like the quintessential horse country to me. But.
It is.
Well, I guess we'll have to do a second show on maybe East Coast equestrian, and maybe Robin can look into her circle and Sheridan can look into her circle and find us some Virginia horse farms and some Wellington, and we can invite them to the conversation. This was great. Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you so much, Sheridan.
Thank you for having us. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this has been great. If you like this show, put it to your friends. Look for it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We're everywhere. Please tell your friends, like us, comment, and tell us what you thought. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye-bye.